And with great power, the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And they were teaching the people, proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection from the dead. Paul was preaching Jesus and the resurrection, Acts 17 and verse 18. Who was declared the Son of God with power by the resurrection from the dead, Romans 1 and verse 4. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. According to his great mercy, has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. The resurrection changed everything for the followers of Christ. And we have spent the last weeks considering the death of Jesus. But Jesus rose again. And this changed everything for these suffering, confused disciples who thought things were going to turn out one way and they didn't, who thought that Jesus was going to establish an earthly kingdom, but it didn't happen. All their dreams, all their hopes, all their plans, everything in their life that they thought was going to happen completely fell apart, and they all ran. They fled. But these fleeing and fearful followers, because of the power of the resurrection, were going to become strong, and they were going to become resolute. The resurrection became the centerpiece of the disciples' teaching. And as we started this lesson, I showed you time and time again where as the disciples went out, they declared the risen Jesus, not the dead one. They declared the powerful Jesus, not the defeated one. And such is the message for us that gives us hope, that breathes life into us as we study the Bible and we learn of Jesus and we read about his march to the cross. But Jesus did not remain on the cross. He rose from the grave. The resurrection indeed became the turning point of their faith, provided them with courage and boldness to proclaim the good news. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greeks. Jesus is not a figure in a book, but a living presence. He is not a memory, but a real presence. The Christian life is not the life of a man who knows about Jesus, but the life of a man who knows Jesus. Because Jesus is risen. It is my goal today for you to leave here feeling great about your relationship with Jesus. And to know that no matter what happens in your life, no matter how bad it is, no matter the trials that come into our lives, mine too, that Jesus can conquer it all. That the grave cannot hold him. And that he offers us that same kind of hope through the resurrection. So today, this first day of the week, we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Now let's read about it in Matthew chapter 28. Matthew 28, I'll be using the New International Version today. Verses 1 through 15. After the Sabbath, at the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning. His clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen just as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy. and ran to tell his disciples. And suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." And while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. And when the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say his disciples came during the night, stole him away while you were asleep. And if this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." And so the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. And this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. Then the 11 went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I will be with you to the very end of the age." This is the way we're going to outline the lesson today. We're going to look at the women, the angels, he is risen, go quickly and tell, and the guards. So first, the women. Behind the main storyline is the women. The faithful, the serving, and the sacrificial. Perhaps sometimes we undervalue and underappreciate the role that the women played in the ministry of Jesus. They're the very ones who define greatness to us because they are the ones that worked behind the scenes who did not draw attention to themselves. The very definition of greatness that Jesus gives himself. Serving unassumingly and in humble ways. This is from Luke chapter 8. Soon afterward, he began going around from one city and village to another, proclaiming and preaching the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and sicknesses. Mary, who was called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had been cast out. Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's servant, and Susanna, and many others who were contributing to their support out of their own private means. Here were women reaching into their own pocketbooks, into their own purses, pulling out money, helping, I would assume maybe helping to cook and take care, do things, work actively in the ministry behind the scenes. These are the women who are at the cross. The men are gone. They are scattered. But the women are there, and the Gospels point out and list the names of some of the women who were there at the cross. The men who had fled were hiding in their grief and unbelief. But the Bible tells us that at the cross there were some women looking on from a distance, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Less, Joseph, and Salome. And when he was in Galilee, they used to follow him and minister to him. And there were many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is just naming a few. There were many women who were there, ministering, loving on, providing for, involved in the ministry of Jesus. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came early to the tomb. There was going to be a problem. How were the women to roll back the stone that closed it? It was heavy. It required the strength of men to put it into place. Well, there was an earthquake. The stone was moved back, so God took care of the logistics problem. Furthermore, there was an angel waiting for the women to reassure them. Let's look for a moment at some of the timeline that we have here of events. I've just kind of compiled a list. I think this first one is from the chronological Bible. First, the women go to the tomb and find it empty. So this is compiling Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, putting them together and coming up with a timeline. Mary Magdalene runs ahead to find Peter and John. Peter and John rush to the tomb with Mary Magdalene. Peter and John walk away perplexed. Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene by the tomb and then to the other women who are still on their way back from the tomb. The women tell the disciples who simply cannot believe it. Although there's no direct record in the Gospels, it seems that Jesus made a special appearance to Peter sometime on Sunday, 1 Corinthians 15 and Luke 24, on the road to Emmaus. Number 8, Jesus appears to the apostles minus Thomas. Here's another timeline we could consider. In these post-resurrection appearances, Mary Magdalene, John 20, the group of women from Matthew 28, Peter from Luke 24, the road to Emmaus disciples, Mark 16, the apostles minus Thomas, then the apostles with Thomas, the 7 beside the sea, the 500 brethren, 1 Corinthians 15, James, 1 Corinthians 15, the 11 at the Great Commission, the 11 at the Ascension, Stephen in Acts chapter 7 where he sees him standing at the right hand of God, and then Paul in Acts chapter 9. The angel. And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred. An angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothes white as snow. And the guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. Now, I have never exactly seen lightning strike something right in front of me, but I've almost. My friend and I were sitting on the front porch of our house in Oklahoma, and there was a storm brewing around. And suddenly, while we were there talking, a lightning struck it had to be really close. I couldn't actually see it. But I mean, I could feel it. It was that close. I could feel the hair stand up on my arm. And it just went kaboom, and the whole house shook. It took me about 3/4 of a second to get in the house. I mean, it was intense. And I'm sure if we had storytelling here, you could tell of a time you've seen something or you've been close to, witnessed lightning. It's intense. It's bright. What a wonderful image for us in our minds to think about the brilliance of this angel. It would get your attention. And no wonder the guards fell and shook and became like dead men if his appearance was like lightning and his clothes were as white as snow. Pretty amazing. Imagine then this awesome presence of the angel, fear-invoking yet also tender towards the women. This embodiment of power and brilliance, but tenderness and care for the women. Maybe a little more intense towards the guards and a little more tender toward the women. So here are a couple of pictures. They don't really do justice. But look at that. My goodness, what intensity there. How bright. And here, this is my favorite one of it striking this tree. Just look at that. Imagine capturing that award-winning photo. My goodness. Or this one. Yeah. Whoa is right. Whoa. You adults need to lighten up. He got it right. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. And when they entered it, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes, Luke tells us, that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. Do you see the power of God beginning to be unveiled here in this resurrection? The powerful angels. Do you suppose the angel could have come and rescued Jesus while he was on the cross? Of course he could have. In the garden, Jesus says, "Put away your swords. I could call on 10 legions of angels who could come and rescue me." The brilliance of the lightning and the power that was displayed here, the angel who was the appearance of lightning, could have occurred at any moment. But Jesus willingly endured the suffering of the cross because he loves us that much. He did it for you and he did it for me. He did it that we might have eternal life. And now the moment has come for his deliverance, his resurrection, and all the glory that surrounds it. In Hebrews chapter 1, verses 3 and 4, the Bible says that the Son, Jesus, is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. And after he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. Now notice these words. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to them. You think this angel is great? Consider Jesus. Because Jesus is much more powerful, much greater. He is the exact representation of God himself, the Father himself. In him all things move and have their being. He is risen. An angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone in front of the tomb and sat upon it. David Roper has written in this Truth for Today commentary, he did not roll away the stone to let Jesus out of the tomb. He was already gone, but to let others see that it was empty. Pretty neat thought. In John chapter 11, when Jesus interacts with Mary and Martha at the death of their brother Lazarus, Jesus said to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. What beautiful faith that she had. What great commitment that she had made to Jesus, an expression of love to him. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. He is the Son of God. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 9, indeed, we had the sentence of death within ourselves, in order that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead. Here Paul recounts some of his trials, some of the tribulations. He says, all these things happened to us. Why did they happen to us? Why did God allow these hardships to come upon us? Why did he allow those? Well, in doing so, Paul learned a lesson. He learned to rely not upon himself, but upon a powerful God who raises the dead. And when we learn that God sometimes allows things difficult to come into our lives, maybe instigated by Satan as temptations upon us, but God allowing them upon our lives so that we won't rely so much on ourselves, but that we'll rely more upon him, upon God who raises the dead. Number 4, go quickly and tell. Then go quickly and tell the disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see him. Now I have told you. The time for declaration has come. The time has come for go and tell. No longer are the disciples to be silent about who Jesus is. Remember, throughout his ministry, he said, no, don't tell anybody that you saw this. Don't tell anyone what you've seen. That time has passed. The Great Commission is only days away. He is risen. Go and tell. It's that time. Now, when the women go and tell the men, they are filled with unbelief and doubt. I don't want to be too hard on these men, because it's easy for me as a critiquer of these men to be hard on them. This was an unraveling situation for them. It was a real-time event for them. And we'd like to think, well, if I was there, I'd have been strong, and I would have believed right away, and I would have been the one. Well, I hesitate to say these things about myself. I was just even considering this week when talking about Clint's lesson last Sunday night about the man who went in and killed all the children in not the Mennonite community, what's the Amish community. And I would like to be able to say, well, I would be forgiving. Somebody killed my Zachary on purpose? I don't know. It's cheap for me to say it with my words and say, yes, I would never lose my faith over that. I don't think I would. I wouldn't want to. You'd have to help me not to, you see. But it would be hard. So let's not be too hard on these men. What they expected didn't happen, and Jesus died, and they're trying to make sense of all of this. They're trying to pull it all together in their mind, and it's all twisted and confusing to them. And so even at this moment, when the women come and tell, they just can't believe it. They doubt it. And as we look down at the Great Commission, even down in verse 17, they saw him and worshiped him, but some doubted. It's just a process. But eventually, in their minds, the resurrection is going to have a full effect upon them. And they're going to understand and realize that God can do anything, even raise the dead. That Jesus is victorious over sin and over Satan and over death. This is going to propel them forward in their faith and give them courage and strength the days to come. So by witnessing the faith struggle of these men, may we press through our own doubts to find faithfulness that they ultimately found. The fact that some of the disciples did doubt can encourage us, we who did not have the possibility to see Jesus in the flesh and work with him in the body. Our faith may waver at times, and we must pray that Jesus will help us to stand firm in our belief. The more we live with Jesus, the more real and wonderful he has become in our lives. Listen, don't give up on your faith. Don't give up on yourself. Keep your eyes focused on Jesus, upon his resurrection, upon his power, upon his strength. He can conquer anything, even death. And he can conquer even the greatest problems in our lives if we will yield ourselves to him and believe that he can. The guards. Robert Thomas has written that the absurdity of this story invented by the Sanhedrin reveals the desperation to which they had been driven by recent developments. Surely the disciples removing the heavy stone from the tomb would have made enough noise to have awakened at least one of the soldiers. Furthermore, if the soldiers were asleep, how could they have known the grave robbers were the disciples? The idea that the fearful, John 20, doubting, Luke 24, disciples somehow overpowered the Roman guard detachment and stole Jesus' body is absurd. That they did this while the guards were asleep is even more preposterous. At any event, the guards were well paid to keep the real story secret. We are told that even today, the version of Jesus' followers secretly coming and stealing the body away during the night is an accepted one among the Jews. However, the real truth that Jesus rose from the dead to be with all Christians forevermore cannot be kept secret. And the fact of his resurrection has not only not been kept secret, but has become the cornerstone and glory of the Christian religion for all time. From the earliest times, the resurrection became the banner of the church, its confidence, its zeal, its strength, and its hope. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Aren't you thankful today for what Jesus has done for us? He is risen. Go and tell. If God be for us, who can be against us? Let's bow for a prayer. Father, we humble ourselves today in your great majesty. Thank you for giving us the Bible to reveal to us this forever life-changing, earth-changing event of Jesus' great resurrection. That sin could not contain him, death could not contain him, but that through your power bestowed upon him, victorious, resurrected, he came forth from the grave with great power, with the presence of angels there to declare his rising to your followers. That we too, Lord, as we stand today and as we look at the tomb of Jesus that is empty, that we understand that it is this power that we have access to because of your Son, Jesus. And may we in our minds never keep Jesus hanging on the cross, but that we keep him as one who has risen, who has gone forth, who is now in heaven, and who we will see in the great resurrection at the end of time. And so, Father, as we leave this building today, may we go and tell. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let's stand and encourage one another with this song.